My name is Cassia 36 years old. Growing up in Portland, I learned early that in our house, responsibility was a costume I wore, and freedom was the dress Brittany never had to take off. Mom called her a spark, as if fire never burned anything. When I was 15, I bussed tables at a diner until my fingers smelled like lemons and fryer oil. Brittany was 7, painting nail polish suns on my denim jacket while Mom laughed. She's being creative. At 10, she rode my bike into the fence and bent the front wheel into a question mark. Dad shrugged, kids make mistakes, and asked if I could take the bus for a while. The chorus was always the same. Angela, sorry, Cassia can handle it. That slip happens sometimes, even in my own head. I've spent most of my life being who people needed, not who I am. Work was my way out. Event planning in Seattle was a decade of glitter and grit, midnight floor plans, 5 a.m., vendor calls, soothing CEOs with champagne and spreadsheets. At 33, I stood barefoot on a deck in Cannon Beach, staring through floor-to-ceiling windows at a Pacific that breathed in whole paragraphs. The house was modern, quiet, a glass-walled promise I'd kept to myself. The dining table was carved from reclaimed wood because Grandma believed old things carried good weather. I chose leather sofas you could fall asleep on and abstract art that made silence feel intentional. I planted lavender and seagrass along the path, a soft boundary between the world and mine. The first true test of boundaries always wears a family face. Last spring, over brunch at Mom's condo, my card on the bill, as usual, Brittany pushed her sunglasses up and pitched her new direction. Okay, big news. I'm shooting a promo for a fashion brand. This could be it. Your beach house would be the perfect vibe. Vibe, I repeated, stirring my coffee. It's not a set, it's a home. Mom brightened. Oh, Cassia, you barely use it in spring. Help your sister get a foothold. Dad kept chewing, the Switzerland of our foretop. Brittany pouted. It's just me and a couple friends. 2 days max. We'll be super careful. There is a specific exhaustion that comes from arguing with a story your family has already agreed to tell. I felt it setting behind my ribs like a sun I didn't order. Rules, I said finally. No crowds, no loud music, no candles. Read the guide I made, no exceptions. Promise, she sang, which for Brittany lands somewhere between wish and warning. The week crashed forward. I drove the 4 hours down after a 12-hour workday to prep, stocked the fridge with her snacks, lined up fresh towels, labeled the smart lights and alarm code in a spiral-bound house guide I'd made for guests because order is my love language. I even left a bottle of wine I didn't want to share. Friday morning, I gave Brittany the walkthrough. Respect the neighbors, no parties. If something breaks, you call me. She barely looked up from her phone. Chill, sis. I'm not throwing a rave. Her smirk should have been my stop sign. Instead, I glanced at the clock. I had a flight to Chicago for a corporate gala that couldn't run itself. I locked the door behind me and told myself that trust is a muscle worth exercising. That night, at 10:07 p.m., my neighbor Marilyn texted. Marilyn. Hi, Cassia. Sorry to bug. Loud music at your place. Everything okay? My stomach dropped. I called Brittany. Voicemail. Me. Turn it down. Now. You promised. I sent Marilyn an apology and a promise I wasn't sure I could keep from 2 time zones away. By midnight, Marilyn again. Quieter now, but lots of cars. I stared at the ballroom layout, glowing on my laptop, and saw only tire tracks. I practiced my client walkthrough, smiling with a jaw that hurt. Saturday morning, habit betrayed me. I opened Instagram while waiting for coffee. Brittany's story led with a wide shot of my deck, vibrating with strangers. Flashers. Glitter. Someone shaking a champagne bottle like it was a weapon. The next clip punched me harder. A slow pan of my living room, my leather sofa, now a backdrop for heels and confetti, a hairline tear glinting like a bad omen. Someone had dragged an abstract canvas off its hook and propped it on the floor. A ring of wet glass stained the corner. Another video caught a candle guttering next to Grandma's table, the wood I'd sworn to protect, with wax spooling toward a scorch. My hand went so cold I nearly dropped the phone. Me. What the hell, Brittany? This is not a shoot. Turn it off. Get everyone out. Delivered. Seen. No reply. More tags poured in from strangers who didn't know they were broadcasting theft. A girl in sequins mixed cocktails on my marble counters. A guy spray painted a banner on my garden fence. Seagrass flattened into mud around him. Someone filmed a house tour like they owned the air. I called Brittany again. Voicemail. Messages. Nothing. Cassia? My Chicago client said softly at my shoulder, noticing the way I'd gone out of focus. Are we okay for tonight? We will be, I lied, then excused myself to the service hall, where the air smelled like starch and certainty. I booked an obscene, last-minute ticket home and texted Lauren. Me. Emergency. She turned my house into content. Lauren. Get back. I'll help you triage. On the flight, I couldn't read, couldn't sleep. I stared at the seatback map and counted how many miles a promise can stretch before it snaps. By the time we landed in Portland, my jaw was a locked door. I rented a car and drove the coast road like a prayer that kept changing its mind. Gravel cracked under my tires as I turned in. The lawn wore tire tracks like bruises. Cups and cans glittered in the rosemary like a cheap constellation. I stood on the deck a second before I opened the door and listened, to the ocean, to my pulse, to the version of myself that used to clean first and feel later. Then I slid the key in and turned. What waited inside smelled like smoke and sugar and someone else's laugh. I didn't step across the threshold. Not yet. I took a photo of my hand on the handle instead, proof of the exact second before ruin becomes inventory. Then I went in. The first thing I did was count. Not money. Breaths. 4 in, 4 held, 4 out, 4 empty. The ocean kept its own metronome behind the glass, waves arriving like a truth I couldn't dodge. Then I crossed the threshold and let the camera do the part my body couldn't. Click. The leather sofa, slashed in a crescent like someone carved a smile where comfort used to be. Click. Confetti ground into the floorboards, an ugly constellation. Click. A ring of candle wax hardened into a pale bruise on Grandma's table, the burn mark dark and certain in the grain. Click. The abstract canvas slid down the wall, frame fractured, corner damp, a glass ring halo staining the paint. Click. The kitchen. Marble sticky with sugar and tequila, cabinet corner dinged, blender dead in a glitter of safety glass. I moved like a claims adjuster in my own life. Upstairs, it tilted from insult to violation. A guest room mattress naked and stained, someone's sequined dress tossed like a comma. The master, my room, my air, looked like a stranger had narrated it. Paint splashed across the duvet, jewelry box pried open. The thin chain I wore on hard days, missing from its velvet like a story taken mid-sentence. I stood very still. I didn't cry. The shock cocooned me in a functional numbness I recognized from event disasters when the florist loses the arch and the string quartet no-shows. Fix first, feel later. But this wasn't a ballroom. It was the hinge of my life. I started a folder on my phone. Damage Lashmar 5516. I time-stamped each picture, added short captions like I was training a future version of me to believe me. Sofa, cut 7 in, leather dye bleed. Table, candle scorch, 3 in. Garden, seagrass trampled. Fence spray paint. I filmed a slow pan of the living room, the camera catching my breath when it shook. Evidence has a temperature. Mine ran cold. The deck door slid open with a gritty shudder. Outside, my lavender lay flattened under sagging streamers, the path littered with cups and someone's heel. The ocean kept breathing, indifferent. It's cruel the way beauty holds fast while your small world comes apart. A gull skittered, unimpressed with human mess. A soft knock pulled me back inside. Marilyn stood in the doorway with a casserole dish held like an apology. Her gray hair was braided down her shoulder, her mouth a line that's learned to say hard things with kindness. "I'm so sorry, Cassia," she said. "We called the sheriff Friday night. Your sister told them she had your permission." "She had permission for a quiet shoot," I said. I heard my voice from far away. "Not this." "They cleared most folks out around 2, Marilyn went on, setting the dish on the counter only after she wiped a clean spot with a napkin from her pocket. "But it started up again Saturday. I texted you. I didn't want to bother your work." "You never bother me," I said. The casserole smelled like thyme and mercy. "Thank you." If you need a contractor recommendation, my husband knows a fellow who does miracles with old wood. She glanced toward the table, read the scorch the way you read a scar. This can be made honest again, she added softly. Not new, honest. When she left, the house seemed to exhale. I sat on the floor by the stairs and called my insurance, speaker on, phone face down, so I wouldn't have to look at anyone while they told me what I already feared. A man with a calm, practiced voice listened, asked for my policy number, and then delivered the sentence like a script worn smooth. I'm sorry, Ms. Wynne. Intentional damage by an invited guest and their invitees is excluded. This would be a civil matter between you and the guest. Even if the guest broke the rules, I asked. The policy language is clear, he said. Sorry in a way that doesn't cost him anything. You can pursue them directly. When the line clicked dead, the silence felt like a verdict. I forwarded my photo folder to a new email titled Damages, Legal, CC'd myself on another account, then dropped the house Wi-Fi and turned on my hotspot. I don't know why, but paranoia felt like prudence now. I called Mom. She answered on the second ring, the cheer in her voice walking in without knocking. Honey, how's Chicago? Brittany destroyed my house. A pause. The weightless kind. Oh, Cassia, I'm sure it's not that bad. She told me she was filming something really creative. Things get messy when art is happening. 30 people. Music. Cops. My neighbor called twice. The sofa is slashed. The art is cracked. Grandma's table is burned. They spray painted the fence. Instagram is a crime scene. Mom sighed like I was the one exhausting her. You always make things sound so dramatic. Brittany is trying to build something. You've always been good at fixing. Can't you? No, I said, a clean blade. I'm done fixing Brittany. She's your sister, Mom said, gentle weapon drawn. Family helps family. I stared at the scorch on the table. I have helped for 28 years. Forgiveness, rides, laptops, rent, bailouts, silence. This time, the helping looks like consequences. She clucked her tongue. I could see her pinching the bridge of her nose. Talk to your father, she said, and hung up before I could say don't. Dad picked up after 6 rings like he was retrieving a dropped tool. Hey, kiddo. She wrecked the house, I said. It's not a spill. It's thousands in damage. He cleared his throat. Well, you know how your mother gets. Maybe don't inflame it. You've got insurance, right? They won't cover it, I said. It's on Brittany. Aren't you doing pretty well? He asked, trying to make it sound like admiration. Seems like a lot of fuss. The line stayed open long enough for me to hear my own breathing as the answer. Okay, Dad, I said, and let him keep his quiet. Brittany didn't pick up when I called. She sent a voice note like a shrug with mascara. I pressed play, and her voice spilled into my ruined kitchen, bubbly as champagne going flat. Sis, chill. It was just a few friends helping. Things got a little wild. I'll clean it up. A giggle. Someone laughing behind her. Don't freak. You know I love you. I held the phone away like it might stain. I saved the message to the folder with all the others. Proof comes in many costumes. Photos, invoices, a neighbor's casserole, a breezy apology at the wrong temperature. Dusk blued the windows. I walked through each room again, this time slower, as if the house needed me to witness it properly. My grandmother used to say that broken things deserve to be seen, so they know they were loved before they were hurt. It felt sentimental and exactly right. By the time I sat at the ruined table with a legal pad, I had a plan or the start of one. Columns, item, damage, estimate, vendor. Slashed leather. Replace. Karen at Ridge and Pine, quoted $6,800. Abstract frame, plus canvas. Cracked. Consult art restorer. Unknown. Table. Scorch. Call Maryland's miracle worker. Floors. Refinish. Blender. Replace. Garden. Replant. Lavender/seagrass. Check nursery. Fence. Clean. Paint. Missing necklace. Report. Cleaning. Hazmat level. I wrote total and left it blank because that number had to be earned. I ate 3 forkfuls of Maryland's casserole cold and tasted salt and relief. Then I opened my laptop and messaged Lauren, documenting everything. Insurance won't cover. Mom calls it art. Brittany says she'll clean it up. The typing dots barely blinked before Lauren's reply arrived. Get estimates. Get a lawyer. We play this like a campaign. Facts, timeline, consequence. The house settled around me, the way structures do when the day cools and wood remembers who it is. Somewhere beyond the glass, the ocean told the same story it tells every night. The tide will come, and then it will go, and what's left is what holds. I turned off the lights, double-checked the lock with a hand that finally shook, and carried my legal pad upstairs. In the doorway of the master, I paused, suddenly, irrationally afraid that if I fell asleep, the house would wake up more damaged. I took one last video, my voice low, naming the date, the time, the state of things. It felt like tucking the truth in for the night. On the pillow, the paint had dried into a stiff map of somewhere I hadn't chosen. I lay on the other side and watched the ceiling go from navy to black. I let myself cry then, quiet, efficient tears that didn't need an audience. When they stopped, the room sounded almost normal. The faint hum of the fridge downstairs, the slow hiss of the heater, the sea talking to the dark. Morning would come with contractors and numbers and the next choice. For now, I held the two facts I could carry without breaking. What was ruined could be repaired, and what was excused would be repeated. I set an alarm and, before sleep pulled me under, texted Lauren one more line. Find me a property lawyer who hates euphemisms. She wrote back 2 words that felt like a hand on my shoulder. Already looking. I slept like a person bracing. When I woke up, the house was still. No surf sounds, no wind wrapping the deck chairs, just that deep, aching quiet that comes after something has burned out. I walked through the living room with coffee in hand, careful not to spill another thing worth mourning. The light through the cracked art frames striped the walls like a barcode. Damage cataloged. Hard on pause. Lauren called before 8 a.m. Morning, General, she said, voice brisk and caffeinated. Ready for battle? I managed a dry laugh. Battle's right. Insurance is a joke. Mom's playing defense. Brittany thinks it's performance art. Then stop talking feelings. Talk invoices, she said. Get 3 quotes minimum. Then we'll talk lawyer. I did exactly that. By noon, I had numbers so specific they felt like math therapy. $6,800 for the sofa, $3,200 for refinishing the floors, $2,500 to restore the heirloom table Maryland's miracle craftsman had already come by to measure, and nearly $10,000 in miscellaneous art and garden damage. The total circled back to that sickening number I'd seen in my head since day one, $25,000. I sent the files to Lauren. Her reply came fast. You're ready for Daniel Hayes. He's a property guy. Calm, but lethal. Don't go in as the hurt sister. Go in as the client who's done their homework. Daniel's office sat on a quiet street in downtown Seattle, walls lined with black and white photos of city architecture. He greeted me with a firm handshake and an expression that said he'd seen worse and planned better. Ms. Wynn, I looked at your documentation. Impressive detail, he said. Now, the question is what outcome you want. Money, accountability, or both? Both, I said without hesitation. She needs to feel it. He nodded slowly. Your sister was an invited guest. That means she's liable for her own actions and the actions of anyone she allowed in. You have every right to demand restitution. 30 days is standard. You can sue if they ignore it. Would they even take it seriously, I asked. He leaned back. People don't take family seriously until it looks like paperwork. I left his office with a weight that was less grief, more clarity. That night, I opened a blank document and wrote the letter like I'd write an event proposal. Precise, cold, professional. Subject, property damage, claim, Cannon Beach residence. During your stay on March 15th, 16th, my property sustained $25,000 in verified damages. Attached are photographs, contractor estimates, and receipts. Payment in full is due within 30 days of this notice. Failure to comply will result in legal action for damages plus attorney's fees. Cassia Wynn. I copied Daniel on the email, attached every file, and hit send. The click of the mouse felt like slamming a door that had never properly closed. The responses trickled in like a bad weather pattern. Brittany. You're joking, right? It's not that deep. I'm not paying that. Mom. Voicemail. 1:13 a.m. Cassia, this is ridiculous. She was just filming. You've always made things bigger than they are. You have the money. Why punish her? Dad. Nothing. By Friday, I'd memorized the silence between them. So when Mom texted, "Family dinner Sunday, don't make it awkward," I knew what was coming. I went anyway, because sometimes the battlefield is also the dining room table. Mom's condo smelled like garlic bread and denial. She greeted me at the door with a brittle smile. "Let's just have a nice evening," she said, which in our family meant, "Don't embarrass me in front of my excuses." Dad was in his recliner, half watching a basketball game, pretending to be Switzerland. Brittany arrived 20 minutes late, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown she hadn't earned. "Traffic," she announced, grabbing a seltzer without asking. Dinner started in forced politeness. Small talk about the weather, Dad's cholesterol, Mom's book club. I waded through the salad course. Then I set my fork down and opened the binder I'd brought. "We need to talk about the beach house," I said, sliding copies across the table. "This is the damage report and the legal estimate. The total is $25,000. The silence that followed could have been framed. Brittany rolled her eyes. "Here we go again. You're obsessed with numbers, Cass. It was a shoot. Stuff happens." "Stuff happens?" I repeated, keeping my tone level. "You invited strangers who slashed my sofa, burned Grandma's table, and destroyed my garden. That's not stuff. That's liability." Mom jumped in, voice trembling between pleading and scolding. Sorry, Cassia, you're making this sound malicious. Your sister was creating. You've always been so hard on her." I stared at her. "Mom, you saw the photos. You can't spin smoke into art." Dad cleared his throat without looking up. "You've got insurance, don't you?" This seems like a lot of fuss. I wanted to scream, but Lauren's voice echoed in my head. "Don't raise your volume. Raise your standards." "Insurance doesn't cover intentional damage," I said calmly. "Brittany's responsible. That's the law." Brittany snorted. "Liable? What is this, a courtroom? It was a vibe. You should relax." Her smirk snapped something I'd been holding since childhood. "You call that a vibe?" I said, voice shaking now. "That was my home, my sanctuary. You turned it into a nightclub." Mom reached for my hand like we were still in the same story. "Sweetheart, with your career, this isn't a big deal. Brittany's struggling. Be kind." That line, "be kind," had been the leash on my neck for 36 years. "It's not kindness when you teach someone they can burn your house and still come to dinner," I said. Dad leaned forward, finally engaging. "Don't do this, Cass. You've always been the responsible one. You're supposed to keep the peace." I met his eyes. "No, Dad, I was the peace. You all just kept walking over it." Brittany pushed back from the table, her chair scraping tile. "You know what? You're jealous. I have freedom. You have rules. Maybe that's your problem." "Freedom doesn't mean no consequences," I said. "It means knowing you earned what you have." She grabbed her purse, muttering, "Whatever, I'm not paying a dime." Then she slammed the door behind her. Mom's eyes filled, trembling just enough to blur the edges of accountability. "You're tearing this family apart over money." I took a slow breath. "It's not about money, it's about respect." Dad's hand flattened over the table. "You've made your point." "Not yet," I said quietly. "Payments due in 30 days. Then I stood, folded my napkin, and left the lasagna steaming on my empty plate. Back in Seattle that night, Lauren opened her door before I even knocked. "Let me guess," she said. "Gaslighting buffet?" I laughed once, sharp. "They think I'm the villain." "Then act like one," she said, handing me a glass of wine, the kind that wins. I told her everything. Mom's guilt trip, Dad's retreat, Brittany's tantrum. When I finished, she leaned forward, eyes bright with strategy. "They won't respect you privately," she said. "So make it public, not to shame them, to prove you mean business. People change when the light hits them." I hesitated. "You mean post about it?" "Exactly. You control the story. Facts only. Keep names out. Make it clear this is about accountability, not revenge." I stared into my wine, feeling the weight of 36 years of silence. "If I do this, there's no going back." Lauren smiled. "Then finally, there's no going back." That night, I drafted the post. A photo of the torn sofa, blurred, no faces, no tags. The caption simple. "When family crosses a line, sometimes the hardest boundary is the first one you draw. $25,000 in damage. No apology, no accountability. I'm done being the fixer." I hit share before fear could edit me. The likes rolled in first. Friends, colleagues, even clients commenting things like, "Good for you. Boundaries matter. They'll learn." But under that validation, a new current began to hum. The story wasn't just mine anymore. Lauren texted at midnight. You just started something bigger than a refund. And maybe she was right, because by morning, Mom was calling again, her voice no longer calm. Cassia, she said, take that post down. I didn't. The next 30 days were about to test exactly how much truth a family could stand before it broke. Mom called 6 times before noon. Each voicemail was the same melody, disbelief laced with shame. Cassia, what will people think? You've embarrassed your sister. You're humiliating this family. Her voice cracked on the last one, the way it always did when the narrative slipped out of her hands. By evening, even my father texted, a single line that read, "This isn't how we solve things." But the post had already left the nest. I hadn't expected it to fly so far. Hundreds of comments poured in from strangers. Stories that sounded like mine, just rearranged. Siblings who drained savings. Parents who called exploitation helping. One message stopped me cold. My brother wrecked our dad's boat, and Mom said, at least he's living his dream. Thank you for saying what we never could. That's when it hit me. This wasn't gossip, it was a mirror. Lauren called that night. Your post is gaining traction. Some lifestyle blog reshared it. Blurred photo, your caption verbatim. Perfect, I said. Let them talk. Maybe Mom will finally hear it when it's echoed back. She chuckled. You sure you're ready for the fallout? I've been ready since the first time she told me I was too responsible. The next morning, my phone lit up with a new text. Mom again, shorter this time. Call me, urgent. I didn't. Instead, I forwarded the message to Lauren, who replied, That's the sound of guilt learning your number. But around noon, an unexpected email arrived. Subject, payment, Cannon Beach damages. Sender, Shirley Wynn. For a moment, I just stared at it, like it might disappear if I blinked too hard. Inside, a bank transfer confirmation. $25,000 sent directly to my account. The note field was empty. No apology, no words, just the transaction. I called Lauren immediately. She paid, I said. Lauren paused. Your mom? Yeah. What about Brittany? She didn't lift a finger. Of course she didn't. Lauren exhaled sharply. So the enabler pays the fine. Classic. Exactly. That was the tragedy in miniature. Mom would rather bleed her own retirement than watch her golden child feel consequence. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this time on video call. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her face filled the screen, eyes red, but makeup intact. I did it, she said quickly, like ripping off a Band-Aid. The transfer. I covered it. I saw, I replied, keeping my tone even. Why? Because this is tearing us apart. You've made your point, Cassia. Let's end it here. Made my point? Mom, that wasn't a lesson. It was a bill, and it wasn't yours to pay. She frowned. Your sister doesn't have that kind of money. You know that. Then maybe she shouldn't have hosted 100 people in someone else's house. Her voice softened, sliding back into old scripts. You've always had more. I just didn't want to see her crushed. She's not like you. She never had to be, I said quietly. You made sure of that. For a long second, she didn't speak. I saw it. The small twitch in her jaw, the flinch of recognition. Then the mask slipped back on. I did what I had to for this family, she said. You've always been strong enough to handle disappointment. I wanted to ask if she'd ever wondered what being too strong costs. Instead, I said, then handle this. I'm cashing the transfer, but not your excuses. And I hung up. The repairs started 2 weeks later. Contractors filled the once hollow rooms with the noise of drills and hammers. Ugly, alive, honest. My leather sofa replaced. My grandmother's table painstakingly sanded until the burn became a faint halo. The craftsman, an older man named Russell, smiled when he ran his hand over the restored surface. See, he said, some scars look better lived in. The phrase stayed with me. Brittany, of course, stayed silent. No calls, no texts. Until one late night, 2 weeks before the 30-day mark, she finally broke the silence with a single message. You happy now? Mom's broke, I'm humiliated, and everyone's talking about us. Congrats. I typed, deleted, retyped. Finally, I sent. No, Brittany, I'm not happy. I'm free. There's a difference. She didn't reply, but I saw her post the next morning. A selfie at a coffee shop, captioned, Haters gonna hate, dreamers gonna create. Thousands of likes. Same curated glow. Different kind of damage. Mom's payment solved the surface, but it didn't touch the rot underneath. The family group chat went silent. No memes, no holiday plans. Dad sent a lonely thumbs up once when I texted about a weather alert. That was it. Yet something strange happened. I didn't miss it. The quiet felt like oxygen after years of secondhand smoke. Lauren called it detox. "You're in withdrawal from people-pleasing," she said. "Let it hurt. It's supposed to." So I leaned into the pain. I started running again, cooking for one without guilt, spending weekends at the beach house while the sea unlearned my name. When the contractors finished, the house gleamed, but differently. It no longer whispered perfection. It stood, proud and flawed. Marilyn stopped by with tea and gossip. "Heard your mom settled things," she said, eyes kind but curious. "She did," I said, setting the kettle down, "but not in the way I needed." She nodded. "Sometimes people repay money because they can't repay respect." I smiled faintly. "You always know how to summarize a crisis." Marilyn chuckled. "Occupational hazard. I've lived long enough to see families implode over less. The trick, dear, is deciding when peace isn't the same as silence." That night, I sat on my repaired deck watching the lavender sway in the salt breeze, thinking about her words. I pulled up my phone, opened my blog draft, and typed, "Family peace isn't the absence of argument, it's the presence of respect. And respect starts when the fixer stops fixing." Then I hit publish. The next morning, the blog exploded. Shares, comments, messages from readers who saw themselves in every line. One wrote, "You put into words what I couldn't say at therapy." Another, "Thank you for proving it's okay to hold people accountable, even if they share your blood." Lauren texted a screenshot of the stats. 10,000 views overnight. You, my friend, are officially a boundary icon. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Real laughter, the kind that doesn't apologize for existing. By the time I closed my laptop, I knew something had shifted. My story had become a lesson, not a wound. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real payment. By April, the hum of hammers faded into the hush of new beginnings. The house, my house, was whole again, but it wasn't the same. It stood like someone who had survived an argument with the sea. Stronger, quieter, stripped of illusions. The contractors left behind a faint scent of cedar and fresh paint. The new navy sofa sat where the slashed one had been, solid but not forgiving. My grandmother's table gleamed, its burn mark sanded into a faint swirl that caught the light like an old scar that had learned to wear itself with dignity. The garden, replanted with lavender and seagrass, leaned into the wind again, resilient and salt-stung. And me? I was still figuring out what resilience actually felt like when the adrenaline ran out. Lauren called it the rebuild phase, and she was right, just not in the way she meant. The first night after the contractors left, I poured a glass of wine and sat alone at the table, staring at the repaired wood. The room looked perfect, but I felt hollow. I'd fought for accountability, gotten my payment, rebuilt everything, and yet it was as if something essential had cracked quietly inside me the night Mom wired that money. I'd wanted justice. What I got was inheritance in reverse, my mother paying for her favorite child's sins. Work took off in strange symmetry with my healing. The story, my post, had gone viral beyond anything I planned. A journalist from a family and lifestyle site emailed asking to feature it. Then came the podcast invitations, the boundaries coach DM requests, the quiet messages from women who'd whispered the same story into their pillows for years. Lauren laughed when she saw my inbox. "Look at you," she said, clinking her glass against mine. "From victim to spokesperson for emotional real estate." I grinned. "Catchy. You should trademark that." She leaned in. "No, seriously, Cassia. Write this. Start that blog we talked about." I did. 2 weeks later, Setting Boundaries went live. A small blog at first, just reflections and lessons I'd learned the hard way. The first post was called "The Cost of Being the Responsible One." It wasn't polished, but it was honest. I wrote about how being the fixer becomes its own addiction, how we mistake being needed for being loved. By May, the blog had 20,000 readers. By June, it had sponsors. But more than that, it had community. I started getting messages that read like diary entries. My mom used my student fund for my brother's wedding. My sister crashed my car and blamed me for leaving the keys out. I thought setting boundaries meant I was selfish. Now I see it means I'm sane. Each message felt like a small repair, tiny emotional nails hammering the world back into something solid. Then, in early August, my mother called. Not the panicked fix this tone, not the guilty let's drop it tone, just quiet, measured. "Cassia, can we meet for lunch?" My stomach nodded. The last time we'd shared a meal, lasagna had turned into warfare. Still, I said yes. We met at a small cafe, halfway between Portland and Seattle. She was already there, hair pinned neatly, a teacup trembling slightly in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes weren't defensive, just tired. Human. "I've been reading your blog," she said softly. "I recognize pieces of us in there." "I figured you might," I said carefully. She nodded. "I was angry at first. Then I kept reading. And I realized I failed both of you." That sentence, those 5 words, hit me harder than any apology ever could. "I thought protecting Brittany would help her," she continued. "I thought pushing you to forgive would keep us close. I see now it just made you both lonely." For a long time, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, like the first time she'd called Brittany a free spirit, and me, the strong one. "Mom," I said quietly, "I didn't want you to pay for what she did. I just wanted you to see me." Her eyes filled. "I see you now." We didn't hug dramatically like a movie. We just sat there, letting the silence be something other than punishment for once. When we stood to leave, she reached across the table, brushed a crumb from my sleeve, and said, "You have your grandmother's spine, you know. She'd be proud." For the first time in years, I believed her. 2 weeks later, Dad appeared at my beach house unannounced. I saw the old pickup in the driveway, paint dull but reliable, like him. He stepped out holding a framed painting, a seascape, waves crashing under a bruised gray sky. His own work. "Thought your place could use this," he muttered, setting it near the new sofa. "Dad," I started, unsure how to fill the gap between us. He just nodded toward the wall. "House looks good," he said. "You handled it." I had to. "Yeah," he said, half smile ghosting over his face. "You always did." When he left, the painting stayed, the tide frozen mid-crash. A small olive branch, signed in oil and silence. By fall, life had found a rhythm again. Work was steady, the blog thriving, and I'd even started seeing someone. Ryan, a graphic designer I'd met through a mutual client. He was easy in the ways that didn't need proving. When I told him about the house, he didn't offer fixes or advice. He just said, "Sounds like you rebuilt more than walls." He wasn't wrong. Brittany, though, remained a ghost. Her posts still sparkled online. Filtered smiles, luxury hauls, captions about self-love. I'd stopped following her months ago, but one night in September, a notification slipped through. "Brittany Harper mentioned you in a story." My pulse jumped. I opened it. A photo of an old childhood picture, us, in matching dresses on Grandma's porch. Captioned, "We've both made mistakes. Here's to starting fresh." The comments were syrupy. "Sister goals. Love seeing forgiveness." I didn't respond publicly, but I did send a private message. "I hope you mean it." No emoji, no bitterness, just that. She read it, no reply, but maybe that was enough for now. October arrived with salt wind and a steady peace I didn't recognize at first. I started hosting small get-togethers at the beach house. Friends, colleagues, even Marilyn and her husband. The laughter that filled the rooms felt lighter than before, less like distraction, more like reclamation. One evening, as the sun sank gold over the Pacific, I caught sight of my grandmother's table. The burn mark gleamed faintly under the warm light, proof that what's been damaged can still belong. And that's when I realized forgiveness isn't the same as access. I could forgive them. I just didn't have to open the door. I poured another glass of wine, sent Lauren a photo of the horizon, and texted, "For the first time, it feels like mine." Her reply came fast. "That's what peace sounds like." Thanksgiving came with the smell of cinnamon and the quiet hum of something unfamiliar. Peace. For the first time in years, there were no expectations, no emotional ultimatums disguised as invitations. Just a single, cautious text from Mom. "Dinner at the condo. No speeches, just food. Please come." It took me 3 hours to decide. Lauren said, "Go." Not for them, for closure. Ryan said, "You've built walls strong enough to walk back through the door without losing yourself." So I went. The condo looked smaller than I remembered, as though time had shrunk the rooms to fit all the words we'd left unsaid. Mom greeted me at the door, hair silvering at the temples, her smile uncertain but real. Dad hovered in the kitchen, carving turkey with the focus of a man avoiding eye contact. And then there was Brittany. She stood by the window wearing a muted beige sweater, no sequins, no filter glow. When she turned, I saw it. Humility, awkward and new. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied. It was the first time we'd spoken in nearly a year. We sat down. The meal was ordinary. Uneasy laughter, small talk about weather, work, the neighbor's new dog. No one mentioned the beach house. No one mentioned money. For the first time, silence didn't mean danger. It meant effort. Halfway through dinner, Dad cleared his throat. "Your blog," he said, not looking up from his plate. "It's good, clear." It took me a second to realize he'd read it. "Thank you," I said softly. Brittany's fork clinked against her plate. "I read it too." I looked up, expecting sarcasm, but she met my gaze. "It made me feel sick," she admitted. "Not because of what you wrote, because it was true." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The sound of the heater filled the space where accusation used to live. She took a shaky breath. "I was stupid, Cass. I thought if I made everything look perfect online, maybe it would fix how messy I actually was. I didn't mean to wreck your house. I just didn't think." Mom reached for her hand. Brittany didn't pull away. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "I just needed to say it." My throat tightened. I'd rehearsed anger for so long that empathy felt like a muscle I hadn't stretched in years. "I don't hate you, Britt," I said quietly, "but I can't pretend nothing happened." "I know," she said. "I just wanted you to know I'm trying. I got a real job, retail management, not glamorous, but steady." "That's good," I said, and I meant it. Mom exhaled like she had been holding her breath since last spring. "I'm proud of both of you," she said, eyes glassy, "even if I took the long way to say it." For once, I didn't correct her. Later that night, I stepped onto the condo's tiny balcony. The air was cold and clean, the city below humming with holiday lights. Mom joined me, wrapping her cardigan tight. "You were right," she said softly, "about everything." I kept rescuing her because I didn't know how to stop needing to be needed. I turned to her. "You're not the only one who did that." She smiled faintly. "You inherited the fixer gene. You just finally learned where to stop." We stood there in companionable quiet, the kind that doesn't demand, only acknowledges. When I left, Mom hugged me longer than she ever had before. No apologies, just presence. Sometimes that's enough. A week later, I drove back to Cannon Beach. The Pacific was restless that day, wind strong enough to push the lavender sideways. Inside, the house smelled like sandalwood and salt, the kind of clean that doesn't erase the past, only rearranges it. I hung Dad's seascape on the living room wall above the sofa. The waves in the painting looked exactly like the ones outside, always moving, never breaking the same way twice. Ryan arrived a few hours later, carrying groceries. "Figured you wouldn't eat if I didn't bring food," he joked. He cooked pasta while I opened wine. We ate on the deck, watching the sun slide into the ocean like it was being forgiven too. "You ever think about selling this place?" he asked. I shook my head. "Never. It's my proof." "Proof of what?" "That you can lose everything you built and still rebuild without asking permission." He smiled. "You should put that on your blog." "Already wrote it," I said. When he fell asleep later, I wandered through the house alone one last time that night, my ritual. The repaired floor creaked under my bare feet, each sound a small declaration. Still here, still mine. On the table sat a folded card I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't from Ryan. The handwriting was looping, hesitant. "Cass, I'm sorry for all of it. For what I broke, and for how long I let you fix me. You didn't deserve that job. Britt." No theatrics, no hashtags, no emojis, just honesty. I pressed my palm against the burn mark on the table, feeling the smooth grain beneath my skin. Some scars never vanish. They just become part of the design. Outside, the wind rose again, brushing against the windows like a heartbeat. I turned off the lights, leaving only the faint glow of the moon across the restored wood. For the first time, the house didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like a boundary kept and a beginning earned. I whispered to the empty room, "We're okay now." And for once, I believed it.